Hello, pen friends. Welcome to another episode of Currently Inked. I'm glad to have you here for this episode. Now, we're going to talk a little bit today about how I use my pens. I've gotten a lot of questions about how I use my pens and exactly how they fit into my daily life. And this is a big deal for a lot of people just getting into the hobby, because if you're not used to doing a lot of handwriting, as I was not when I first started, I did everything on a computer. Everything. And so if you're not used to using pens and writing by hand, it takes some adjustment figuring out where in the course of your day you can fit this thing into what you already do. And for some people, it's really easy. For others, it's a big challenge, and they think, I want more pens, I want more ink, but it doesn't make sense for me to buy them because I never use them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I use my pens and answer some of your questions about that. And the first question is a really interesting one. I have a great example for it here. It is from, let me pull up the question here, from Brian in Norway, who says, do you combine your other hobbies with your pens? For example, do you keep handwritten records on your plants or write down baking recipes? Yes, and this is a really, really, really great way to learn how to use your pens. If you have other hobbies, find ways of taking notes, keeping records, keeping track of what you do using your fountain pens on your other hobbies. Now, this is my garden journal. I started this last year. It is made from the Staples Arc system, so it uses these disc rings here. They call it disc-bound notebooks, and you can get them from Levenger and from Staples and a few other places as well. I like this because it allows you to take pages in and out. These are just a couple of plastic covers I bought. And it's paper I printed myself. I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. So on the inside, what I've done is I've created a series of templates here showing different beds in my yard. So this is a bed in the front yard that is kind of an odd shape, and I've planted a bunch of stuff there. So I created this template in Adobe Illustrator and printed up a bunch of them, and I use 32-pound Hewlett-Packard LaserJet paper because it's nice and thick, but it takes fountain pen ink really well. I left a space where I could put the plant tag on here, some areas for notes, some of the specifics of the plant, and then I printed a bunch of note space on the back as well. So in theory, and this is a big theory, I don't always stick to this, I like to take notes. When I move the plant, if it does well, if it doesn't do well, what I did to help improve it, that sort of thing. If it came back the following winter. So I had a couple plants I bought in Utah and brought up here to Washington. I planted them. They were gorgeous. Some of my favorite plants. And one of them didn't make it through the winter here. I suspect it because it was too wet. The ground was too wet. It's a guess, but I don't know for sure. So that sort of thing I'll be keeping track of. In fact, let me see if I can find it really quickly. Rose mallow. Oh yes, here it was. It was a rose mallow, which is part of the hibiscus family, and is this heartthrob. And the flowers were like this big around and this dark burgundy color. It was such a cool plant, but I don't think it made it through the winter here. I'm not seeing any life so far this spring. Anyway, so yeah, this is one area where I do it, and I worked on this a lot last summer. This is something I love to do on a Saturday. When it was sunny outside, I'd go out and sit on my patio table under the umbrella with a few pens and my things, my templates here, and just write it in. I can put stuff in and take stuff out in any order I want and review it. I've actually pulled this out several times over the winter to say, okay, now I knew I had this somewhere. Where did I put it? Or I've got something that used to grow here. I can't remember if that's a perennial that I need to leave alone or if it's an annual where I can rip it out. So I come back and say, what was that? And is it an annual or a perennial? That sort of thing. That's going to become very important with my vegetables that I'm doing this year with my new garden as well. So that's one area where I do that. I do write down recipes. I'm writing a novel. I use my pens for that. I am writing music. I do a lot of music writing, and so I use my pens for writing lyrics and things like that. So hobbies are a really great way to incorporate your hobby or incorporate your pen hobby into your other hobbies. And that should help drive the passion, the dual passion of both hobbies should give you a really good opportunity to find opportunities to use your pen. And I think I said the word opportunity too many times there. All right. So this next question comes, I actually got a similar question or related questions from two different people, so I'm going to kind of try to answer both of them at the same time. This first one came from Mark in Belgium, who says, in Currently Inked 32, you said that you were writing a book. Can you share more details about what motivated you to start writing? Also, what is the story about? And then the other question I got, let me look up the number here, was from Brian in Norway, who said, you mentioned you were giving novel writing a try. I guess at least a part of your writing process is being done with pens and paper. What is your workflow for getting the handwritten notes into the computer? If applicable, what software do you use to write your novel? So yes, I did start writing a novel a month and a half, 2 months ago. I got about 40,000 words into it and kind of petered out. Not because I don't have an idea of where the story wants to go, it was just a time thing. I'm really hoping to pick it back up this summer and at least finish the first draft. Like all first drafts, it's awful. I know it's awful. As the saying goes, there's no such thing as good writing, only good rewriting, or great rewriting. I think there's no such thing as great writing, only great rewriting, I think is what the saying is. And I'm not talking about what the story is yet because it's not done, and I don't know if this thing will ever see the light of day. You know, like I said, it's terrible. I know it's terrible, but I'm trying to silence the inner critic as much as possible and just finish it. So then I can start working on improving the base layer, you know, building upon the base layer. So I start writing by hand. I find that writing by hand gets me unstuck. And I don't need to write a whole chapter by hand, but if I sit down, I'm like, I don't know what I want the characters to do next. Picking up a pen and sitting down and writing it out by hand on paper will get me unstuck. And I'll write 2, 3, maybe 4 pages on paper, and I'll stop. And instead of finishing it on paper, what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll type it into my software. I'll get to the software in just a second. As I type it back in, I'm editing on the fly. And then once I finish what I've written by hand, I find I can just keep writing. At that point, I've gotten the momentum going. I know where the story's going. I know what I want to have happen. And so if I get stuck, writing is where I do it. And I type it in manually because I like the opportunity to review what I wrote by hand, to make adjustments, to sparkle up the dialogue, make it a little bit more natural. And I find that I take a lot of shortcuts when I write by hand, just to move things along, because I'm not a fast writer. I write pretty slowly. And so I like to maybe flesh out a couple of areas. And if there's an area I know I want to flesh out, I'll actually just star it, that sort of thing. Now, going back to, I believe it was Mark's question. Is it Mark? I should probably check, just so I'm not saying the wrong name. Yes, it is Mark. Yay, I was right. What got me started on it? I've always liked writing. I used to write reviews for film reviews for a website in Australia many moons ago. I tried writing novels and memoirs. I wrote a memoir. It was almost 100,000, 120,000 words, wrote a memoir. It was awful. But I wrote it and I got it done, and it will never see the light of day because I'm embarrassed by it. But I just wanted to write. And as an audiobook narrator, I get to read a lot of books that make it out there. And some of the books that make it out there are terrible. And I mean, I love to narrate a good book, and I don't love to narrate a bad book, but I figured, look, there are a lot of people out there who have the courage and the bravery to publish this thing and put it out there, and it's terrible. It's clearly never seen an editor. It's barely seen a spell checker. It is formed together with only the basic and most fundamental laws of grammar, and sometimes not even that. I narrated one book where the character's name changed halfway through the book, and the author hadn't realized it, and I had to reread half the book with the right name because the author was like, oh, shoot, I didn't realize I had changed that name. So, I figured if that stuff can get self-published, I could self-publish my own book. Now, I don't know if I will because I do have quality standards, or try to, but that's kind of what it was one of those, well, you can do it, so can I. And I've always loved writing, and I had a blast when I was sitting down and writing the stuff. Stuff was coming out that I wasn't expecting, and the characters were developing personalities, and it was very, very cathartic. It was a very cathartic experience for me. So I really hope to get back to it. That's kind of why I did it. Now, I was asked, what software do you use when I type it in? I use a piece of software called Scrivener. It's a well-known writing software, and a couple of things that are really great about the software is the way it allows you to reorganize your pieces. You write everything in kind of separate folders, and then you can move parts around, and it's much easier than using something like Microsoft Word. It will also automatically format your book for you for ebook formats when you get ready to publish, or if you want to send a manuscript off to a publisher. It's a very, very powerful piece of software. I really like it a lot. It's got really, really great storyboarding and note card functionality, so you can kind of outline your story and that sort of thing. So that's what I use. I suspect from here on out, that's what I will always use, because I just really, really love the way the software works, especially now that they finally got it working for iPad. So that's what I use. Okay, this next question comes from John in San Francisco, who says, you've often identified your favorite inks throughout your videos, most of which seem to be discontinued. Could you perhaps recommend some currently mass-produced alternatives to your favorite teal, purple, brown, and green inks? Thanks. So I could put it here in the video, John, but I'm actually going to direct you over to the Pen Habit website. Under the frequently asked questions link, one of the questions is, what are your favorite inks? And I've got several in each color family broken down, and I've indicated where they are discontinued and where they are not. I could answer it here, but I've answered it several times, and it seems like a lot of times people don't easily find the answer to that question. So I'm going to direct you over to the frequently asked questions page. Take a look at it there, and then if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, and I will do my best to answer. So thanks for asking. All right. Before we tackle this last question, I just wanted to thank another one of the Pen Habit sponsors, and I will thank this week one of the earliest sponsors of the Pen Habit, Fontoplumo. So Fontoplumo is a Netherlands-based retailer and was the very first Pen Habit sponsor. So Frank at Fontoplumo has been doing us a solid for a really, really long time. Fontoplumo's got some really great stuff. They've got some access to some really cool Lamy materials that are hard to find, and they've got Aurora and Montegrappa and some of these other really, really well-known names. So head over to fontoplumo.nl, check out their web store. They did just move over to a brand new retail location as well. So if you happen to be in the Netherlands, maybe head over and give them a shout out. Tell them I said hi. I would love to get over there to the Netherlands. All those Dutch stores seem to have a lot of good pen stores over there. I'm very envious. So a huge thank you to the folks at Fontoplumo, fontoplumo.nl, for their support. And a quick reminder to folks here in the US, if you're not concerned about ordering from overseas, don't forget that you automatically get 20% off anything you order from Europe, because they won't include the taxes there. The 20% VAT, value-added tax, is included in the price most of the time. And so if your shipping address is to the United States, you're going to see like a 20% discount. So you can find some really, really good prices. And for some brands, the prices in Europe are cheaper than the prices here in the United States. So you can get some really, really great deals. In fact, I got my very first Aurora Optima from Fontoplumo and got just a smoking deal on it. So something to keep in mind. All right, so this final question comes from Stanley in Santa Clara, California, who says, Matt, what is your favorite sound when writing? Like, what combination of nib and paper produces your favorite writing sound? Do you like it more scratchy or more silent? I like it to be almost silent. I prefer very smooth papers most of the time. And I prefer very smooth nibs most of the time, and very wet nibs. I like my writing experience to be lubricated and almost frictionless. I can appreciate a good pencil-like feedback and a pencil-like sound. I have a pen I'm preparing a review for right now. I'm not going to tell you what one it is, but it sounds like dragging a nail across concrete. It is one of the most unpleasant sounds I've ever heard. Some people really like when you get that singing quality to a nib. So like the friction is just right and the resonance is just right, that it almost has a frequency to it as opposed to just a sound. It almost has a pitch. I can't stand that. I have to smooth or adjust that out of the nib because I just can't stand that feel. As someone who has such a musically tuned ear, I am really sensitive to pitch and sound and things like that. So I like my writing to be as quiet and frictionless and smooth as possible. So I find that Tomoe River paper is one of the best for that. Rhodia paper, I find, tends to produce that squeaky singing quality a little bit more often because of the coating on the paper. When I use the wheat straw paper, the now or soon to be discontinued wheat straw paper that's in my Inky Fingers notebooks, there is a little bit of a friction, a little bit of a sound, but it's like a soft pencil, not a hard pencil. And I like that quite a bit. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you again for all of your wonderful questions and comments and supportful emails. I get a lot of really wonderful emails from a lot of really wonderful people. So I really do appreciate you joining me here. Thanks for watching. If you like these videos, give them a thumbs up. If you hate them, give them a thumbs up. Maybe subscribe to the channel. You can even turn on notifications to be notified when a new video is uploaded from the Pen Habit channel. And I really do appreciate you joining me here. We'll see you next time on another Currently Inked. Bye.